The glass doors of a New York restaurant were filled with muted music, rhythmic jazz, spiced with the quiet conversations of well-heeled patrons. Large round tables, laden with flower arrangements and glittering silverware, were arranged in groups, and each guest was making small talk in a low voice. It was here, in one of Manhattan's most posh locations, that a legend was expected to arrive that evening, Robert De Niro. The entire society column knew that De Niro was an inimitable actor who played gangsters, boxers, CIA agents, and dozens of other iconic roles. In society, they whispered, if only they could meet Donald Trump himself, who also often visits the area. But no one imagined that today's meeting would turn into a quarrel with unambiguous insults, because the owner of the White House, even if he is a former one, could appear unexpectedly. And it would be louder than any movie. Several luxurious black cars pulled up in a light rain. First came De Niro himself, dressed stylishly but without pathos. The paparazzi cameras immediately flashed in a blinding scattering. The journalists shouted, "Bobby, say a few words about Trump!" But he only threw out a short, "Nothing new," and disappeared behind the restaurant door, slamming it dully. A little later, there was already a sense of unease in the air from the direction of Trump Tower. Rumors were circulating that Donald Trump intended to drop in for an evening cocktail with old acquaintances. And while the waiters were setting glasses on the high counter by the bar, Trump himself walked through the doors, accompanied by security. The yellow glare of the sconces on the left and right boldly caught his figure. For a few seconds, the room stood in frozen curiosity. "Oh, hi, Robert," Trump said, seemingly friendly, though there was a familiar note of arrogance in his voice. "Long time no see. I hear you're doing interviews about politics?" Robert De Niro turned slowly, looking up at the former president, and the tense pause became palpable, like a buffer between two poles of a magnet. "Politics?" he asked, deliberately pausing. "No, Donnie, I was just telling the truth about you. And if you don't like it, that's your problem." No one in the room expected the brief remark to take the situation beyond polite social standards. Trump winced slightly, but then smiled. "Are you telling the truth?" "I doubt it. More likely your insults are just bad acting." Thus, an invisible tension flared up in the air of the restaurant. And no one knew that this confrontation would grow, acquire new details, and turn into a loud clash between Hollywood and the political ex-Olympus. The next day, tabloids exploded with headlines like, "Robert De Niro calls Trump a dangerous sociopath," or "Trump accuses De Niro of being an overrated talent." The internet exploded with memes. One showed De Niro in front of a Goodfellas poster with the cry, "Are you talking to me, Donnie?" Another showed Trump in a Twitter frenzy, scribbling offensive messages about Little Bobby. Talk shows, blogs, and videos have been full of such phrases as "malignant narcissist, con artist," and "stupid clown," all of which De Niro literally blurted out the other day when asked what he thought of Trump's political legacy. The actor himself had no doubt Trump's presidency was a terrible mistake, and people realized it, albeit slowly. "I saw this man build his empire on bluff," De Niro told a reporter on a talk show hosted in the basement of a television center. "He made himself a brand, deceived anyone who would believe him. He should have been on a reality show about fraud, not become president." "Well, what about his family values?" the host asked, bowing his head. "Or, for example, his relationship with Melania?" "Melania?" De Niro chuckled. "Look, she's part of this mafia family, too, albeit with a more reserved public role. But she bears her share of responsibility. I don't delve into personal lives, but all their action has long since gone beyond the bounds of normality." Those who watched the episode agreed. De Niro spoke passionately, without filtering anything. It seemed like his emotions were like a sledgehammer. And Trump and his family were under his blows on live television. The internet commented that Bobby is not tired of insults. On the contrary, he is ready to keep hammering the image of the former president until he disappears from the political arena. At the same time, Trump did not stand aside. He published an official statement. "Robert De Niro is overrated, never a real star. Lots of old movies, but nothing special. He's not that tall, by the way, and his intelligence must be poor to spout such nonsense. The tone of the statement seemed entirely in the spirit of Trump, forcing many to recall how he had previously responded to criticism, mocking others' physical attributes, driving opponents to the point of absurdity. Thus, the conflict heated up even more, and society hungrily caught their every word. A midweek evening teleconference was planned to focus on the Hollywood standoff. Popular TV host Ramona Rivers invited several experts to her studio to discuss whether the Trump and Niro conflict had morphed into something more, perhaps a symbolic battle between Hollywood and the political elite. The video link included a well-known blogger, a journalist from Washington, and one of Trump's former political advisors. Robert De Niro is one of the last good old actors who can say whatever he wants, the blogger began, pushing his bangs out of his face. The question is, what does he want to achieve with this? He's not a politician, he doesn't have an electorate. But Trump has an electorate, the journalist continued, and he will not allow his idol to be insulted. After all, millions of his supporters see that old Bobby is crossing the line. I wonder if De Niro is afraid of receiving not only words but also threats in response. I know Mr. Trump personally, the former advisor interjected, brushing an imaginary speck of dust from his lapel. He thinks De Niro is a worthless actor living in old roles. And Donald is flattered to pose as a defender of American values against the movie clique. The conversation soon turned to the future of Trump Tower and the image of former First Lady Melania. Rumors claimed that she was extremely annoyed by De Niro's antics, but could not comment publicly. It was also mentioned that De Niro himself was allegedly, ideologically inciting the Actors Guild to speak out against Trump. No one presented any real evidence, but they began to talk about a whole secret conspiracy in Hollywood. The question hung in the air. Is the entire entertainment industry really bent on bringing down any Trump politicians? Or is this just a high-profile media duel that benefits both? Ramona Rivers smiled at the camera and concluded. One thing is clear. Robert De Niro versus Donald Trump is not just an old story. Every day the level of insults increases, and the public's thirst for spectacle only increases. When the whole story spilled onto social media, it created a real storm. Twitter was filled with hashtags like #DeNiroVsTrump, #MafiaPresident, and #FakeActor. Each side tried to be louder and more vitriolic about the other. De Niro's supporters, they published excerpts from his roles, captioned with caustic comments. "This is how you should fight swindlers," or "a gangster in the film, but a real hero in reality." Trump supporters, they claimed that De Niro is a bohemian hypocrite, accused him of arrogance, and reminded him that the actor hasn't been making hits for a long time. One viral tweet said, "Robert has gotten older, has sunk into an obsessive hatred of the great president, and calls it the truth." Neutral public savored the conflict by creating memes. One depicted De Niro as the boxer from Raging Bull, giving a shot to a sociopath. Trump's face was painted on top of the mannequin. Another depicted Trump as a businessman with the caption, "You're fired," a reference to his reality show. The situation itself began to resemble a TV series with new episodes. Every week De Niro gave short, caustic interviews, without mincing words, and Trump periodically responded in his Truth Social, or made statements at rallies in front of supporters, calling the actor irrational and a hypocrite who does not understand true patriotism. In the background, great changes were taking place in American politics. But the people seemed more interested in the personal squabbles between two public figures than in serious legislation. Some called it the most ridiculous drama of the decade. But everyone was watching with rapture the new exchange of insults. Robert De Niro once even said at a meeting with film school students, "I'm just trying to show people that you can't tolerate people who are deceiving the country. Stop making a hero out of Trump. He's a stupid, petty crook. I'll say it every day." In response, Trump himself ridiculed his empty statements and hinted that Bobby, unlike me, has done nothing for the country except make stupid movies. The next day, This phrase flew around all social networks. A major interview, arranged by one of the central TV channels, promised to become the culmination of the conflict. Journalists negotiated for a long time to unite De Niro and Trump in the framework of one TV program, but it turned out to be a double session. First De Niro spoke, and 2 hours later Trump was given the floor. That is, their face-to-face confrontation did not occur. Robert appeared on the screen and immediately declared, "It angers me that this man got so much power and used it only to strengthen his ego. I am sure that he will remain in history as one of the most shameful characters. And I am not going to soften the tone. I have no desire to do so." The presenter tried to clarify. "Tell me, what about Melania? Don't you regret that she was also dubbed part of the mafia family?" "No," De Niro shrugged. "She knew who she was marrying. Everyone is responsible for their own choices." A couple of hours later, the same channel aired a taped segment of Trump, who seemed to be barely containing his irritation. "Robert continues to insult me," Donald said, leaning back in his chair. "I admit he was a good actor in the last century, but now he's talking nonsense. He probably suffers from Trump syndrome. He can't calm down. He thinks he's a great critic, but he's been of no interest to anyone for a long time. Except maybe the liberal media." In response to a question about Melania and her attitude towards De Niro's attacks, Trump briefly waved it off. "My wife has more important things to do than deal with this pathetic old man. She cares about the well-being of her children, not about pointless squabbles with stars whose careers have faded." So the public got another dose of emotion. Some happily liked Trump's apt word, others posted footage on social networks of De Niro indignantly clenching his fists. Still others concluded that all this was beneficial to both De Niro and Trump, since both were getting unlimited PR, the former as a rebel and whistleblower, the latter as a cheerful politician who could snap back at accusations. Of course, no one expected them to make peace anytime soon. Moreover, reporters had already compiled a long list of epithets exchanged between the opponents, and joked that this list was enough for a separate encyclopedia of crudeness of the 21st century. As for Melania, she has hardly commented on the situation officially. However, rumors persisted that she was extremely outraged when she saw a clip of De Niro's speech, and Donald promised to make him regret his words. Alas, judging by De Niro's latest sarcastic interviews, he had no intention of backing down. In fact, this whole story never had an ending. Their scandal continued in waves, dying down for a couple of weeks, only to explode again with a bright portion of verbal fire. Surely, when the next political cycle began in the USA, the public again craved a new round of De Niro against Trump. And so they lived, Hollywood, the establishment, social networks, memes, interviews, TV broadcasts, everything mixed into a bright, never-ending show. And who knows, maybe one day all this will spill out into a full-fledged film, where the main antagonist is the ex-president himself, and the desperate hero is a movie star who accuses him of malignant narcissism. In the meantime, viewers are guessing, who will ultimately emerge victorious from this almost theatrical drama?